We underestimated humanity. Now the ruins of our once mighty civilization litter the surface of their wretched planet. It started like any other conquest. Our massive war fleet emerged from hyperspace, catching the primitive humans off guard. On my bridge, initial scans showed them to be laughably inferior, technologically, numerically, in every way that mattered. I gave the order to launch our assault force and establish a foothold before they could mount a coordinated defense. But then reports started coming in from the front lines, scattered at first, but soon painting an unsettling picture. Our ground troops, despite superior armor and weaponry, were meeting fierce, determined resistance from the human soldiers. They employed guerrilla hit-and-run tactics, luring us into ambushes and disorienting our formations. Meanwhile, their pitiful orbital fleet threw itself at our warships with suicidal fervor, destroying several vessels before we could fully bring our screens online. I quickly realized more aggressive measures were needed. We moved our command mothership into low Earth orbit, and I broadcast a planet-wide ultimatum: total, immediate surrender or face annihilation. I expected them to see reason, to kneel before the might of the Tzenkethi Empire. How wrong I was. Even now, with our main base established and their governments in disarray, the humans fight on. Scattered resistance cells have united under a single tenacious leader, Sergeant Nolan Tucker. They strike our fortifications day and night, undeterred by casualties, demolishing our supplies, picking off our patrols. They are an elusive, unrelenting foe. As I look down upon the smoke and flames rising from their ruined cities, I know this war is far from over. The humans should have been conquered long ago. Instead, with every passing day, they threaten to cast off the yoke of Tzenkethi rule. If we cannot break their will to fight, if we cannot crush this Tucker and his band of soldiers, we risk not just losing Earth, but being driven from the galaxy entirely. We underestimated humanity, and now we pay the price. This is no longer a war of conquest, it is a battle for survival, one that the Tzenkethi Empire no longer seems certain to win. Nolan crouched behind the smoldering wreckage of a Tzenkethi hover tank, his rifle clutched tight to his chest. Around him, the Rocky Mountains loomed, their snow-capped peaks shrouded in billowing smoke from the raging battle below. Liam knelt beside him, tapping furiously on a battered laptop wired into the captured scout ship's cloaking matrix. "How much longer?" Nolan growled, popping up to pick off an alien trooper with a well-placed headshot. "Almost there," Liam muttered, his face bathed in the sickly glow of the screen. "Just need to bypass the quantum encryption and... Got it!" The scout ship shimmered and vanished, its cloaking field enveloping Nolan's strike team. He reached out, feeling the tingle of displaced air as his hand passed through the energy bubble. They boarded the ship, Liam sliding into the pilot's seat. The interior was cramped, all harsh angles and pulsing conduits. Nolan's squad checked their weapons, faces grim behind tinted visors. As they lifted off, Liam angled the ship towards the looming Tzenkethi command center, built into the mountainside. Nolan caught a glimpse of the battle raging below, ragtag bands of human fighters clashing with the aliens' advanced weapons and armor. They were buying time for his team to complete their mission. Failure was not an option. The cloaked ship glided through the command center's energy shields like a ghost. Liam brought them down on a landing pad, the ship jolting as it touched down. Nolan was the first one out, rifle up and scanning. The air smelled of ozone and scorched metal. "Fan out and stay alert," he hissed over the comm. "Liam, find us a route to that EMP weapon." They moved deeper into the base, passing eerily empty corridors lined with pulsing power conduits and glowing control panels. The cloaking field shimmered around them, masking their thermal signatures. "In here," Liam whispered, gesturing to a massive blast door. "I'm reading a huge power surge on the other side." Nolan motioned to Gomez, his demolitions expert. The burly Marine attached a breaching charge to the door, his hands steady. They stacked up, weapons ready. The charge detonated with a muffled whoomp, and they were through, emerging into a cavernous chamber, dominated by a towering spire of alien metal and crystal. Coils of blue energy crackled up its length, arcing between spinning rings. Jesus, Nolan breathed. That thing could send us back to the Stone Age. Already on it, boss. Liam tossed Nolan a brick of alien plastic explosive. Gomez, we need to wire the primary power couplings. Shaw, Evans, plant the rest on the secondary relays. They split up, hurrying to rig the EMP for destruction. Nolan was just attaching his brick to a pulsing conduit when a shrill alarm split the air. A hidden panel hissed open, and Tzenkethi warriors boiled out, plasma rifles crackling. "Shit, we've been made!" Nolan roared, diving for cover as bolts of superheated gas ripped through the space he'd just occupied. "Defensive positions!" His team scattered, finding cover behind control consoles and pillars. Alien shouts and human screams mixed with the barking of human rifles and the sizzling hiss of plasma fire. They were pinned down, the Tzenkethi pushing forward. Nolan leaned out, dropping 3 aliens with precise shots, but more kept coming, heedless of their losses. A plasma bolt seared past his head, close enough to scorch his hair. "Liam, blow the fucking charges!" "We need more time," the young tech shouted back, popping up to snap off a burst from his carbine. 30 seconds. Nolan drew his pistol, an old M1911, and charged the closest Tzenkethi. Plasma bolts stitched the deck plates around his feet. He felt one burn through his jacket, searing the skin beneath. He tackled the alien, knocking its rifle away and jamming his pistol under its chin. The Tzenkethi thrashed, its exoskeleton hard as steel. Nolan pulled the trigger, painting the wall with green ichor. A plasma bolt slammed into his back, burning through his armor. Nolan screamed, falling to one knee. His vision swam, darkening at the edges. Through the roaring in his ears, he heard Liam's shout. "Charges set, everyone clear the blast." Nolan forced himself up, stumbling towards the evac point. 2 of his men grabbed him, hauling him along. The cloaking field enveloped them as they tumbled back into the scout ship. Liam punched the engines and they rocketed up, away from the command center. The EMP charges detonated, a blinding pulse of energy washing out from the base of the mountain, spreading across the continent in a crackling wave. The Tzenkethi command center went dark, internal explosions rippling through its armored hide. Nolan slumped against the bulkhead, his burned flesh screaming. But through the pain he felt a fierce surge of triumph. They had struck a blow against the aliens, shown them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But the celebration was short-lived. As they watched, the sky above lit up with dozens of blinding flashes. Liam swore, pointing to the external cameras. "Tzenkethi ships, they're bombing, fuck, they're hitting New York, LA, Chicago." The orbital strikes continued, alien warships raining superheated plasma down on Earth's major cities. Millions incinerated in seconds as the vengeful Tzenkethi lashed out. Nolan watched numbly as Orin's face appeared on every still-functioning channel and screen. The alien commander glared balefully out at humanity, his voice oozing with malice. "You brought this upon yourselves. Now witness the price of defiance." The image cut to a shaky camera feed, the smoking ruins of the White House lawn. A group of Tzenkethi stood over a kneeling figure, shoving him forward. Nolan's breath caught. It was the president. The world watched in horrified silence as the Tzenkethi leader raised his sidearm and executed the leader of the free world on live television. The crack of the gunshot echoed, and something deep within humanity's collective psyche snapped. Across the globe, from shattered cities to remote villages, people stood up. The janitor, the teacher, the bus driver, the farmer, young and old, men and women. They took up anything that could be used as a weapon. Knives, pipes, axes, antique firearms passed down through generations. This was no longer a war fought by soldiers on battlefields. It had become something deeper, more primal. A species' furious howl of defiance against an enemy that would see them extinct. On that day, all of humanity joined the battle for Earth. Nolan gripped the controls of the stolen Tzenkethi scout ship, his fingers tightening with tension. Beside him, Liam worked furiously at the alien console, fingers flying over the unfamiliar symbols. "IFF codes uploaded," Liam whispered. "We're masked as a routine patrol." The massive bulk of the Tsenkethi mothership loomed before them, a city-sized fortress of alien metal. Nolan guided their ship towards a docking port, willing his hands not to shake. As soon as they docked, Nolan's strike team split up. He and Liam headed for the bridge while the others peeled off to plant explosives throughout the ship's vital systems. The corridors were a maze of harsh angles and pulsing bioluminescent panels. They encountered a few Tsenkethi crew members, but their stolen uniforms and Liam's hacked credentials got them through without raising alarms. Meanwhile, on Earth, Jake crouched behind the burnt-out husk of a Humvee, surveying the battlefield through a pair of cracked binoculars. The ruins of Washington, D.C. stretched out before him, the shattered remains of the Washington Monument jutting into the sky like a broken tooth. A Tsenkethi hover tank rounded the corner, its plasma cannon glowing hot. Jake grabbed a rocket launcher from a nearby soldier and took aim. The rocket streaked out, catching the alien vehicle square in its vulnerable underside. It erupted in a fireball, raining debris across the National Mall. "That's how we do it, people," Jake roared, pumping his fist. "Keep pushing. We've got these alien bastards on the ropes." Back on the mothership, Nolan and Liam finally reached the bridge. With a nod to each other, they burst through the doors, weapons at the ready. Commander Orin spun to face them, his reptilian features contorted in shock. "How dare you—" "Shut it, Scaleface," Nolan growled, training his rifle on the alien leader. "Your invasion's over." Orin's shock quickly morphed into sneering contempt. "You primitives think you can challenge the might of the Tsenkethi Empire? Your species will be eradicated for this insult." "Save the speech," Nolan cut him off. He nodded to Liam, who tapped a few commands on his datapad. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge lit up with tactical data, clear evidence of Tsenkethi losses and blunders throughout the war. "We've tapped into your comms," Nolan explained, a hint of smugness in his voice. "Your entire fleet is seeing this right now. How do you think they'll react when they realize their mighty empire got its ass handed to it by a bunch of primitives?" Orin's eyes darted between the screens, his composure cracking. Outside the bridge they could hear confused shouts from the Tsenkethi crew. "Your choice, Orin," Nolan pressed. "Ceasefire and full withdrawal, or we blow this ship to Kingdom Come with you on it. What's it gonna be?" As the ceasefire order went out, Jake watched in amazement as Tsenkethi troops began laying down their weapons. Human resistance fighters emerged from the rubble, wary but triumphant. 5 years after the Tsenkethi invasion, Earth bore the scars of war. Nolan Tucker stood atop a half-rebuilt skyscraper in New York, surveying the city's patchwork of reconstruction and ruins. The air still carried a faint metallic tang from alien weaponry. "How's it looking down there, Jake?" Nolan spoke into his comm. Jake Walters' gruff voice crackled back. "Same shit, different day. Got another group of protesters outside the Tsenkethi embassy, keeping them in check, but tensions are high." Nolan sighed. Despite their efforts, mistrust between humans and Tsenkethi ran deep. He was about to respond when an urgent call came through. "Nolan, it's Liam. We've got a situation." Hours later, Nolan stared at the holographic projections filling the war room. Liam's team had stumbled upon an abandoned Tsenkethi research facility. The images showed sterile labs, alien equipment, and most disturbing of all, containment units marked with biohazard symbols. Liam's voice was grim. "We found this." He held up a vial of swirling iridescent liquid. "It's a virus engineered specifically to target human DNA. If released, it could wipe us out." The room erupted in shouts and arguments. General Hawkins banged his hand on the table. "We should strike now. Bomb their homeworld back to the Stone Age before they use this on us." Nolan raised his hand, silencing the room. "And risk reigniting a war we barely survived? No. We pursue diplomatic channels first." Weeks of tense negotiations followed. Finally, the Tsenkethi agreed to share their research and assist in neutralizing the virus. A joint team was assembled to secure and destroy the samples. At the facility, Nolan oversaw the operation. Human and Zenkethi scientists worked side by side, an uneasy alliance. Suddenly alarms blared. Plasma fire erupted from multiple directions. "We're under attack," Jake shouted, returning fire. "Zenkethi extremists." In the chaos, a stray shot shattered a containment unit. Alarm screamed as the virus was released. Nolan saw both humans and Zenkethi collapse, writhing in agony. "Evacuate now," Nolan ordered. As they retreated, he realized Liam was missing. "Where's Liam?" "Still inside," a technician gasped. "He's trying to purge the system." Nolan grabbed Jake. "We're going back in." They fought their way through infected personnel and Zenkethi rebels. They found Liam at a central console, frantically working. "Almost got it," Liam coughed, his skin pale and clammy. "Initiating self-destruct." The facility rumbled. Nolan hauled Liam up, but their exit was blocked by debris. Nolan's eyes fell on a captured Zenkethi ship. "The warp drive. We can create a singularity, contain the outbreak." They worked feverishly, rigging the drive as the infection spread. With seconds to spare, Nolan activated it. Space twisted, a miniature black hole forming. The virus, the facility, everything was pulled in. As rescue teams arrived, Nolan saw the fear in their eyes. Word of the virus was spreading. He knew the fight was not nearly finished. Somewhere out there, Zenkethi hardliners still had samples of the virus, and he had to find them before it was too late. Nolan's head throbbed as he surveyed the wreckage of their task force. The Zenkethi colony, world's harsh sun, beat down on the smoking ruins of what had once been a thriving outpost. Now it was a battlefield. "Jake, take point," Nolan ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands. "We need to hit that research facility hard and fast." They advanced through the rubble-strewn streets, human and Zenkethi soldiers moving in uneasy sync. Plasma fire erupted from a nearby building, sending them diving for cover. "Vezra, where's that back entrance you promised?" Nolan barked into his comm. The Zenkethi scientist's voice crackled back. 50 meters ahead, behind the collapsed water tower." Nolan signaled to Jake. "Keep them busy, we're going in." As Jake's team unleashed a barrage of suppressing fire, Nolan led Vezra and Liam towards the hidden entrance. They slipped into the darkness of the underground lab, the air thick with the scent of ozone and alien chemicals. Security forces swarmed them almost immediately. Nolan's rifle spat death, downing 2 Zenkethi before they could raise their weapons. Liam's tech skills made short work of the electronic locks, clearing their path deeper into the facility. They reached the central vault, Nolan's heart pounding, but as the massive door swung open, his stomach dropped, empty. "It's gone," Liam breathed. "They moved the virus." A cold laugh echoed behind them. Nolan spun to see Vezra, a cruel smile twisting his alien features, a plasma pistol trained on them. "Your humans are so predictable," Vezra sneered. He tapped a device on his wrist. "Kill them all." The lab erupted in chaos. Zenkethi troops poured in from every entrance. Liam cried out as a plasma bolt caught him in the side, collapsing against Nolan. With no time to think, Nolan dragged Liam behind a console and hit his fist into the nearest control panel. Alarms blared as the facility's self-destruct sequence initiated. "Hold on," Nolan grunted, hauling Liam up. They fought their way through the collapsing lab, Nolan's armor scorched and smoking from near misses. They burst onto the surface, only to find Jake's team pinned down by heavy fire. Nolan spotted a Zenkethi armored transport nearby. "Everyone on me," he shouted, half carrying Liam towards the vehicle. They piled in, Jake taking the controls. The transport roared to life, plowing through the Zenkethi lines. For a moment, Nolan dared to hope. Then the world exploded. He awoke to pain and the acrid stench of a Zenkethi holding cell. Vezra loomed over him, flanked by armed guards. "Welcome back, Nolan Tucker," Vezra said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "I hope you're comfortable. You'll be our guest for quite some time." Nolan's eyes widened as he saw Liam, pale and trembling, being forced to work at a nearby console. "You see," Vezra continued, Your friend's expertise is proving quite useful in perfecting our little project, and you're the perfect test subject. Nolan watched in horror as Vezra turned to a group of captured Tsenkethi loyalists. Without hesitation, the renegade scientist raised his weapon and fired, executing them one by one. "Let that be a lesson," Vezra announced to the shocked onlookers. "Loyalty to the old ways will not be tolerated." Nolan's mind raced. He had to act. As the guards dragged away the bodies, he saw his chance. With a roar, he launched himself at the nearest Tsenkethi, sparking a chaotic brawl. Alarms blared as prisoners and guards alike joined the fray. In the confusion, Nolan spotted Jake fighting his way through the crowd. They fought tooth and nail, using every dirty trick they'd learned in years of combat. But as they finally reached the lab's entrance, Nolan's blood ran cold. Through the reinforced window, he saw Vezra standing triumphantly before a bank of glowing consoles. The dispersal countdown had begun. Nolan's heart pounded as he watched the countdown tick away. He turned to Jake, who nodded grimly. Without a word, they burst through the lab door, weapons blazing. The sudden assault caught Vezra's forces off guard. Alarms blared as prisoners overwhelmed guards throughout the facility. Nolan ducked under a plasma bolt, rolling to cover behind an overturned table. He popped up, firing 3 quick shots that dropped a Tsenkethi soldier. Nolan shouted over the din. "Shut it down!" Liam's fingers flew across the console, his face pale and drawn. "Working on it." Vezra snarled, smacking his fist on a control panel. With a hiss, the first virus canisters began to deploy. "It's over, human," Vezra sneered, plasma pistol leveled at Nolan's head. "Stand down or I release the full payload." Nolan's grip tightened on his weapon. "You're bluffing!" A thin smile spread across Liam's face. "He is, and he doesn't know I've already uploaded a virus of my own." Vezra's eyes widened in shock. He spun towards the main terminal, but it was too late. The deployment system sputtered and died, corrupted beyond repair. "No," Vezra howled, firing wildly. The lab erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts ricocheted off walls and equipment. Nolan dove for cover, returning fire. A stray shot caught Vezra in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Vezra's lieutenants surged forward, trying to salvage their doomed operation. Nolan saw his chance. He pulled a detonator from his belt, praying the charges he'd set earlier were still in place. "Fire in the hole," Nolan roared, slamming the button. The explosion rocked the facility. Flames engulfed the virus stockpile, incinerating the deadly pathogen. Acrid smoke filled the air as alarms screamed. Jake's voice crackled over the comm. "Nolan, Loyalist reinforcements incoming. We've got this contained." Nolan allowed himself a moment of relief before scanning the devastated lab. His blood ran cold as he spotted Liam slumped against the self-destruct console, a plasma burn seared across his chest. "Liam!" Nolan rushed to his friend's side, cradling his head. "Stay with me, buddy." Liam's eyes fluttered closed, his breathing shallow. Nolan clutched the chip, his knees going weak. "We'll get you out of here," Nolan said, his voice thick. "Just hold on." But Liam was beyond hearing. With a final shuddering breath, he went still. Nolan bowed his head, grief and rage warring within him. The sound of boots on metal snapped him back to reality. Jake burst in, followed by a squad of Tsenkethi loyalists. Nolan stood, his face a mask of dedication. "It's not over," he said, holding up the data chip. "Liam gave us a fighting chance. We're going to use it." Jake nodded, understanding. "What's the play?" "We upload Liam's consciousness," Nolan said. "Keep his genius alive, and then we hunt down every last one of these bastards." As they prepared to leave the smoldering ruins of the lab, Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was just the beginning of a much larger war. Days later, back on Earth, Nolan stood before a bank of servers, Liam's data chip in hand. Jake watched from nearby as technicians made final preparations. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked. He inserted the chip. Screens flickered to life, lines of code scrolling past faster than the eye could follow. A holographic display materialized, coalescing into a familiar face. "Hello, Nolan," Liam's voice echoed from the speakers. "It seems we have work to do." Nolan allowed himself a small smile. "Welcome back, old friend." But as the days wore on, strange anomalies began to appear in their systems. Data corruption, inexplicable power fluctuations, security breaches that shouldn't have been possible. Nolan pored over log files, his frustration mounting. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "It's like someone's deliberately sabotaging us." A red alert klaxon shattered the tense silence. Jake burst into the room, his face grim. "Nolan, we've got a situation," Jake said. "Someone just tried to access the virus data from inside the facility." Nolan's blood ran cold. "Lock it down now!" As they raced to secure the compound, Nolan knew their troubles were not nearly finished. Someone wanted this war to continue despite the toll, and he had a sinking feeling they were about to find out just how. Nolan's fist slammed into the console, rattling the holographic display of Liam's face. "Orin's alive. How the hell did we miss this?" Liam's digital visage flickered. The data was deeply encrypted. It took significant processing power to unravel the truth. Nolan ran a hand through his hair, teeth gritted. "We need to disappear now." They wiped the systems, erasing all traces of their presence. As alarms blared throughout the facility, Nolan tucked Liam's portable matrix under his arm and slipped out through a maintenance tunnel. Hours later, in a dingy safe house on the outskirts of New Seattle, Nolan's comm chirped. A familiar voice crackled through. "Long time no see, Tucker. Heard you could use a hand." Nolan's lips curled into a half-smile. "Silas, you old bastard. I was hoping you'd pick up my signal." Silas's underground bunker hummed with activity. Nolan's eyes darted from station to station, taking in the array of surveillance feeds and tactical displays. "Welcome to the Resistance," Silas said, clapping Nolan on the shoulder. "Let's get to work." Days blurred together as they pored over intelligence reports. Liam's Seektang worked tirelessly, sifting through mountains of data. Silas's network of informants fed them a steady stream of intel. "Got something," Liam announced, his holographic form materializing above a central table. "Intercepted communications between Orin and a Tzenkethi admiral named Krasin." Nolan leaned in, studying the scrolling text. His blood ran cold as he processed the implications. "They're planning to unleash the virus on human colonies," he breathed. "Krasin gets his weapon. Orin gets his revenge." A priority alert cut through the tense atmosphere. Nolan's heart sank as he read the message. "Jake's been taken," he said, voice tight. "Extremists hit one of our black sites. They're demanding a trade. Jake's life for Liam's matrix." Silas's team sprang into action, prepping gear and running tactical simulations. Nolan paced, mind racing. "We can't give them Liam," he muttered, "but we can't abandon Jake." His eyes fell on a familiar face, Vezra, the Tzenkethi scientist they'd battled before. Now an uneasy ally, Vezra nodded grimly. The extremist compound loomed before them, a fortress of steel and energy shields. Nolan adjusted his grip on the case containing Liam's matrix. "Remember," he sub-vocalized to his team, "we're just here to make the trade. Liam, you know what to do." "Affirmative," Liam's voice whispered in his ear. "Initiating Hakan now." As they approached the main gate, alarms suddenly blared. Plasma fire erupted from hidden turrets. Nolan dove for cover, the case clutched to his chest. "Vezra, now!" he shouted. The Tzenkethi scientist hurled a device into the air. It detonated with a blinding flash, overloading the compound's sensors. Chaos erupted. Silas's rebels struck from multiple angles, drawing fire and attention. Nolan and Vezra used the confusion to slip inside. They fought their way through twisting corridors, Liam's hacked schematics guiding them. Nolan's rifle barked, downing extremists with practiced precision. They burst into a large chamber, just as a hooded figure raised a plasma pistol to Jake's head. Nolan's world narrowed to a pinpoint. Liam's virus triggered. Lights flickered, doors slammed shut. In the confusion, Nolan tackled Jake to the ground as Vezra opened fire. The room exploded into a maelstrom of plasma bolts and shrapnel. Nolan dragged Jake behind a fallen pillar. "Good to see you," Jake coughed, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Let's get you out of here," Nolan grunted. They fought their way back towards the entrance. Vezra provided covering fire, his aim deadly accurate. "Go!" the Tzenkethi scientist shouted as they neared the exit. "I'll hold them off." Nolan hesitated, but Jake pulled him onwards. They sprinted into the night as explosions rocked the compound behind them. Later, aboard Silas's stealth shuttle, Nolan studied the star chart before him. A blinking icon highlighted a remote asteroid. "That's where Orin and Krasin are meeting," Liam's hologram stated. "Our last chance to stop them." Nolan nodded, his face set with tight-lipped focus. "Prep the team, we end this now." As the shuttle's engines flared to life, Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that their hardest fight still lay ahead. The asteroid loomed before them, a jagged mass of rock and metal against the star-speckled void. Nolan gripped the shuttle's control yoke, his eyes fixed on the facility's faint outline. "Liam, status on their defenses?" he asked. The holographic display flickered to life. External grid still active, detecting multiple weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Nolan nodded. "All right, team, you know the drill. We go in dark and quiet." The shuttle's engines cut out, inertia carrying them towards their target. Cloaking fields shimmered to life, rendering them invisible to prying eyes. Jake's voice crackled over the comm. "EMP charges prepped and ready." They drifted closer, breath held. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Proximity alert," Liam warned. "They've detected us." Nolan cursed. "Jake, now!" Brilliant blue flashes erupted across the asteroid's surface as the EMP charges detonated. The facility's external defenses flickered and died. "We're in!" Nolan shouted, gunning the engines. The shuttle screamed towards the airlock, slamming into the docking clamps. Nolan's team poured out, weapons at the ready. "Jake, take your squad and secure that virus," Nolan ordered. "We'll handle Orin and Krasin." The teams split, each racing down separate corridors. Jake's boots pounded the metal grating as plasma bolts sizzled past. He dove behind a storage crate, returning fire. The air filled with the acrid stench of ozone as both sides exchanged fire. Jake watched in horror as two of his men fell, their armor blackened and smoking. "Push forward!" he roared, leading the charge. They fought tooth and nail through twisting passages, the sounds of battle echoing off cold metal walls. Finally, they reached the main vault. Jake's eyes widened as he saw the blinking devices attached to the door. "It's rigged! Everyone back!" They scrambled for cover as the explosion rocked the facility. When the smoke cleared, Jake peered inside. The virus production equipment lay in ruins. "Damn it," he muttered. "Nolan Vault's been sabotaged. We're regrouping to provide backup." Meanwhile, Nolan's team crept towards the command center. Liam's disembodied voice whispered in their ears. "Security protocols bypassed. You have a clear path to the bridge." Orin snarled, reaching for his sidearm. Nolan fired, the shot grazing Orin's arm. The Tzenkethi leader howled in pain. Suddenly, the room's defensive turret swiveled towards them. Krasin grinned savagely, his hand on the control panel. "Not quite," he hissed. Plasma fire erupted from all sides. Nolan's team scrambled for cover as Krasin grabbed the wounded Orin, dragging him towards an escape hatch. "Stop them!" Nolan shouted, but it was too late. The Tzenkethi leaders vanished, blast doors slamming shut behind them. "Tracking. They're making for the shuttle bay. If they launch—" "Like hell," Nolan snarled. "Team, move out." They fought their way through waves of Tzenkethi soldiers, every second precious. As they neared the hangar, Nolan saw Krasin's shuttle powering up. "Liam, can you stop it?" The shuttle's engines sputtered and died. Nolan saw his chance. He sprinted forward, drawing his grappling gun. The line shot out, latching onto the shuttle's hull. Nolan activated the winch, launching himself towards the crippled vessel. He crashed through the entry hatch, rolling to his feet. Inside, chaos reigned. Krasin roared orders as his men tried to regain control. Nolan's fist connected with a guard's jaw, sending him sprawling. He ducked under a wild swing, driving his knee into another's gut. A meaty hand closed around his throat. Krasin loomed over him, eyes blazing with hatred. "You've lost, human," the Admiral snarled. Nolan struggled for breath, spots dancing before his eyes. With a desperate surge of strength, he drove his thumb into Krasin's eye. The Tzenkethi howled, releasing his grip. Nolan gasped for air, scrambling for his fallen weapon. Outside, Jake's team had reached the hangar. Their suppressing fire kept the remaining Tzenkethi pinned down. Nolan stood over the fallen Krasin, chest heaving. He turned to Orin, who lay slumped against the bulkhead. "Shut it down," Nolan demanded. "All of it." Orin's lips curled into a pained sneer. "You think this ends here?" he wheezed. "We are Legion. The virus will spread, and humanity will burn." Despite his wounds, Orin's fingers danced across the control panel. Warning lights flashed as the bioweapon containment protocols deactivated. "It's done," Orin coughed, blood flecking his lips. "But you've only delayed the inevitable. We will see your kind extinct, regardless of the cost." Nolan's lips pursed as Orin's eyes glazed over, his final breath rattling in his chest. The hangar erupted with activity as human reinforcements poured in. Medics rushed to tend the wounded as demolitions experts secured the remaining virus stockpiles. Nolan nodded, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond the hangar's force field. "This isn't over," he murmured. "Not by a long shot." "Shot?" Nolan's words hung in the air as he surveyed the bustling command center. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data from Earth's newly fortified orbital defense grid. Jake leaned over a console, his face illuminated by the soft blue glow. "Liam, run another simulation on the adaptive shield harmonics." The AI's disembodied voice responded, "Initiating simulation. Projected effectiveness against Tzenkethi weaponry increased by 17.3%. Nolan nodded, satisfaction evident in his tired eyes. "Good. Keep pushing those numbers up. We can't afford any weak points." A priority alert flashed across the main screen. Jake's fingers flew across the haptic interface, pulling up the encrypted message. "Nolan, you need to see this," he said, voice tense. Nolan strode over, scanning the intercepted Tzenkethi communication. His eyes hardened as he processed its contents. "Fractured empire, multiple factions," he muttered, "and some hardliners pushing for even more extreme measures." Jake's expression darkened. "They're blaming their defeat on not using bioweapons. These fanatics want to double down on genocide." Nolan's fist slammed against the console. "We didn't come this far just to face an even deadlier threat." The command center fell silent as Liam's holographic form materialized. "I've identified a key figure in these extremist movements, Warmaster Skrull, a notorious Tzenkethi strategist." Data streams coalesced into an image of the alien warlord, a hulking figure with cruel reptilian features. "He's rallying support among the fringe elements," Liam continued, "amassing weapons, ships, and followers on the outskirts of Tzenkethi space." Nolan studied the tactical overlays, his mind racing. "We need more intel. What's Skrull's endgame?" Hours passed as they pored over surveillance data and decrypted transmissions. Finally, Liam's avatar pulsed with urgency. "I've pinpointed Skrull's location," the AI announced. "He's overseeing construction of a massive warship at a mobile shipyard. Based on the schematics I've accessed, this dreadnought could obliterate entire planets." The color drained from Jake's face. "Christ, if they finish building that thing—" Nolan's eyes hardened with drive. "Then we don't let them finish it. We hit them first, hard and fast." The next days were a whirlwind of preparation. Nolan and Jake assembled their elite strike team, a mix of hardened human veterans and Tzenkethi defectors who opposed Skrull's genocidal vision. As they approached the shipyard in their stealth vessels, Nolan addressed the assembled warriors. The strike force moved into position, cloaking fields masking their approach. For a breathless moment, it seemed they might slip past the shipyard's formidable defenses undetected. Then alarms blared. Skrul's ships swarmed from concealed hangars, weapons blazing. "We've been made," Jake shouted over the comm. "All units, engage!" Space erupted in chaos as human and allied Tsenkethi vessels clashed with Skrul's forces. Nolan's ship weaved through the firestorm, aiming for the half-constructed dreadnought looming in the distance. "Jake, take your team planetside," Nolan ordered. "We'll board the big bastard and blow it from the inside out." Their ship shuddered under enemy fire as they made their final approach. With a bone-jarring impact, they latched onto the dreadnought's unfinished hull. Nolan led the charge through the breach, plasma rifle at the ready. They fought their way through twisting corridors, the ship's innards a maze of exposed circuitry and half-finished bulkheads. Tsenkethi defenders swarmed from all directions. Nolan's team answered with precision fire, their weapons leaving scorch marks on metal walls. "Liam, talk to me," Nolan shouted as he ducked behind a fallen support beam. "Where's the main reactor?" The AI's voice crackled in his ear. "2 levels down, 300 meters starboard. I'm attempting to access their systems now." Suddenly, the dreadnought's internal defenses powered down. Blast doors slid open as Liam seized temporary control. They fought their way inside, quickly setting up defensive positions. As Nolan's team rigged explosives, a chilling voice echoed through the ship's comm system. "I must commend your tenacity, humans," Skrul's voice dripped with contempt. "But your efforts are futile." Warning klaxons blared as massive amounts of energy began to surge through the ship. "Nolan," Liam's voice was urgent, "he's activated the phase disruptor array. If it fires, billions will die." Nolan's blood ran cold as he realized the terrible choice before him. With grim commitment, he opened a channel to his team. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady. "We're out of options. We have to overload these reactors now before that weapon can fire." Heavy silence fell over the comm channel as his words sank in. As his team began the overload sequence, Nolan recorded a final message for those he was leaving behind. When it was done, he took his position by the reactor controls. The AI's response was solemn. "I will, Nolan. Goodbye, my friend." Nolan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed the final sequence. The reactors screamed as they built to critical mass. In a blinding flash, the dreadnought tore itself apart from within. The resulting shockwave rippled outward, shredding Skrul's fleet and shipyards. As the light faded, Jake stared in stunned silence at the debris field from the planet's surface. Tears stung his eyes as the magnitude of their victory, and its cost, sank in. "They did it," he whispered. "Nolan, you crazy son of a bitch, you actually did it." In the days that followed, news of Nolan's sacrifice spread across human space. Countless lives had been saved, but the price had been steep. Jake stood before a gathering of military and civilian leaders, Liam's holographic form hovering beside him. "We've won a great victory," Jake said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But our work isn't done. We must remain vigilant, ready to face whatever threats may come." Jake stood motionless on the bridge of the battered frigate, his eyes fixed on the viewport. The debris field stretched as far as he could see, twisted metal and shattered hulls, the remnants of Skrul's once mighty fleet. Somewhere out there, lost among the cosmic wreckage, were the remains of Nolan and his strike team. A junior officer approached, datapad in hand. "Sir, we've recovered what we could from Skrul's shipyards. Liam is analyzing the data now." Jake nodded, his heart made. He'd barely slept since the battle, the weight of command settling heavily on his shoulders. Without Nolan's steady presence, he felt adrift. The holographic form of Liam flickered to life beside him. "Jake, I've found something. You need to see this." Lines of code and fragmented schematics filled the air. Jake's eyes widened as he processed the information. "This can't be right," he muttered. Liam's avatar pulsed with urgency. "I'm afraid it is. Skrul was just the beginning. We're dealing with a full-scale extinction plan." As Jake absorbed the horrifying details of Operation Extinction Horizon, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow. "What now?" Jake growled. A technician's fingers flew across her console. "Sir, our systems are being overridden. Some kind of AI virus is—" "Shut it down!" Jake shouted, but it was too late. Across human space, corrupted defense systems turned against their own. Antimatter warheads hidden in plain sight detonated in populated areas. New Eden Colony vanished in a blinding flash. Arcadia's orbital platforms crumbled, raining fiery debris on the cities below. Jake watched in horror as the casualty reports flooded in. Billions dead in minutes. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this?" Liam's avatar flickered, his expression grim. "The virus, it's familiar. Jake, we need to find its source." They traced the digital infection back through labyrinthine networks, finally zeroing in on a forgotten research outpost. Inside, they found the broken form of Dr. Elias Chen, the man who had given birth to Liam's consciousness. Chen's bloodshot eyes darted wildly as Jake approached. "I had no choice," the scientist babbled. "They made me create a dark mirror of Liam, a version without ethics or restraint." Jake's fists clenched as he realized the depth of the Tsenkethi's deception. But before he could press for more answers, a new threat emerged. At the edge of the solar system, an alien construct of impossible size shimmered into existence. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he gazed upon the extinction-level megastructure, a weapon capable of unraveling reality itself. "All ships, battle stations," Jake's voice rang out across the calm channels. "This ends now." The remnants of Earth's fleet surged forward, clashing with waves of Tsenkethi extremists. Jake's flagship punched through the enemy lines, plasma bolts scorching its hull. As they neared the megastructure's surface, Jake turned to Liam. "Ready?" The AI's consciousness transferred into a waiting sentinel droid. Always. They fought their way through twisting alien corridors, Tsenkethi cultists falling before their advance. Jake's muscles burned as he pushed forward, Liam's mechanical form at his side. They reached the central nexus, but a blast from a Tsenkethi particle cannon sent Liam's droid tumbling. Sparks erupted from exposed circuitry as Jake dragged his friend to cover. "Go!" Liam's synthesized voice crackled. "I'll hold them off." Jake hesitated, then nodded grimly. He sprinted for the control core as Liam turned to face the oncoming horde. Inside the Nexus, Jake's fingers flew across alien interfaces. A sound like reality tearing filled the air as the megastructure began to destabilize. Suddenly, Liam's battered form stumbled through the entrance. "Jake!" The AI's voice was faint. "It's not enough. The singularity, I can disrupt it, but—" Understanding dawned in Jake's eyes. He gripped Liam's shoulder, words failing him. Liam's optics flickered. "It's okay, Jake. This is what I was made for." Energy surged through the droid's frame as Liam overloaded his systems. Jake ran, the corridors collapsing around him. He made it to an escape pod, just as the megastructure tore itself apart. From the viewport, he watched the Tsenkethi fleets disintegrate. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.